Hello, and thanks for joining me on today's episode of Simply Saturday, where I am going to show you a card that is fast and easy to make. My name is Julie, and this is Stamp with Julie Baum. Thank you so much for joining today. The card that we are making is so easy, you are going to want to recreate this time and time again. We are going to do today's card with some Christmas papers, but you could certainly use absolutely any papers that you have. And one other thing that is kind of unique to today's card is I'm going to help you use up some of those papers that are maybe not your favorite, or maybe you find them challenging because the size of the print, maybe the size is too small or too large, and every time you go to use it, it's not quite right. We're going to use up those papers today. I am using one greeting from the Trees for Sale stamp set. It's this one that says "You Light Up the Season," but as you'll see, really any greeting that you want to use will work. I recommend more of a long greeting than a short, fat one or tall, but you can make it work whichever way. So let's get started. All right, let's talk about our papers. I'm going to make a card base out of Sahara Sand, and this is 8.5 by 5.5, scored down the center at 4 1/4 and folded. So this is a very traditional size card base, and that's what we're starting with. I also want to make mention that Sahara Sand, or a very light color, is also going to lend itself to our Simply Saturday design today, and I will come back to that. All right, then you're going to need a piece of designer series paper that I'm calling DSP number 2. This would be kind of your contrast or coordinating paper. Your designer series paper 1 is typically going to be the first choice, the one that you picked out that you really want to use. This is the piece that you want to coordinate with it. Often this is going to be more of a background print and not a primary print. This piece is 4 1/8 inch by 5 3/8. This piece is going to get attached right to our card base like so. Then I've got another piece of cardstock. In this instance, I matched my Sahara Sand, but you could pick a contrasting color if you wanted to. This piece measures 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. And finally, our DSP number 1. This is the paper that I said, okay, this is what I want to use today. Let's create a card around it. So this piece measures 3 1/2 inches by 4 3/4 inches. All right, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is attach our papers to their layers. This one also, that would be a great one to use as your large background paper. But I chose this. It's a beautiful paper. I just have kind of struggled with how to use it. So I wanted so badly to feature it and to be able to use it and not just have it sitting there. So that's what inspired the card today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and layer this on here. Now, my cardstock layers are only slightly larger than the designer series paper layers. That way I have a tiny little border all the way around. It's not a very big border, like often we'll do, you know, maybe 1/4 inch. So it's a smaller border. Then we're gonna also put the, see, that one I think is also kind of challenging. That would be pretty. But we're gonna put the adhesive on that side and flip it over. Okay, and same thing, my designer series paper is just slightly smaller than the card base, so I just have a tiny little border of my Sahara Sand showing all around it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is grab some dimensionals. We're going to put 5 of them on the back of this piece. 1 in the center, and 1 on each of the corners. All right, let's peel those backings off. And this piece now is going to get mounted onto the card base. And what I'm going to do is just slightly put it askew. So it's kind of tilted to the right. I'm making sure that none of the corners are hanging off of the card base, but they are right up to it. See that? Okay, and press that down. Look, already it's just beautiful. It's letting the designer series paper shine with all of its glorious pattern. I just love it. All right, now we're going to take that little piece. I chose Evening Evergreen because it worked with so many of the papers in this packet. And as a reminder, on the back of your designer series packet, when you first receive it from Stampin' Up, look at the backing sheet and it will list all of the solid colored cardstock that will coordinate with the designs with the colors in the designer paper. So one of those colors for these papers is Evening Evergreen. Now I'm going to make a quick banner end on the tip of this. You could use one of a number of punches to do it, but we're going to do with our scissors today, just quickly. So you make your snip in the center, then go from the corner to that place where you started your snip, and you have a nice even banner end. All right, so to attach this, I am still going to use my liquid glue. And because I've got this piece slightly crooked, it's a little hard to eyeball where this is to make it straight. So to make it easy, I am putting my card nice and straight, first of all. And then I'm going to use this straight edge here as my eyeball line to line this up. So it's going to go straight along the spine of the card. So it's hard to just tell if this is straight, but because it's straight here, it's going to be pretty straight. All right, now it's time for the only stamping that we're doing. I have a scrap of basic white paper. This is a tiny scrap, but I do save these because they are perfect for what we're going to do right now. If you need to cut a piece, it's a 1/2 inch by whatever length, because we're going to trim it down. But literally, I have a bunch of these scraps saved, and when I'm going to stamp a long sentiment on it, you grab one of these and it's just going to be perfect. So let's find my stamp. I have laid it down here, and now I don't see it. Okay, hold on. I might have put it in another bin when I was stamping a second card. Oh yeah, here it is. At the same time, today I've been getting ready for Stamp Club, which, by the way, if you are going to be attending Stamp Club next Wednesday, our November meeting, we will be making a card very similar to this, but we're going to use the Santa Express Designer Series paper. So I hope to see you next Wednesday, and you're going to get to make one of these. Okay, so I've got my black Memento ink. Also, another word about your photopolymer stamps. When your stamps are brand new, right out of the case, they kind of need to get warmed up a little bit. So you do want to make sure that you ink them, stamp on scrap paper, do it 2, 3, 4 times. Wash it with your chamois, get all the ink off, and then start again, and that will kind of remove any residue that was on the photopolymer to begin with. And like I said, just kind of warm up your stamp. So here's an example of that. When I first pulled this stamp out, inked it up, and stamped it for the first time, I got this. So it wasn't too bad, but you can see that the ends were dark, the middle was really light. So I did it a second time, and now it was kind of all light. Then I probably did it a third time. Let's look over here. Oh, this was getting much closer. Then I washed it, re-inked, and moved on. And then you can see that the inking is much more uniform. So just a little hint, if you reach for a brand new stamp and you stamp it once or twice and you're not completely happy with the image, maybe you just need to get it warmed up a little bit. Once you've used it a time or 2 or 3, then you'll always be ready for the next time. All right, I am going to bring in my Stampin' Pierce mat, and that looks pretty good. I've got room for a second one if I need it. Give the ink a moment to soak into the paper. Okay, we are going to use that as is. Just take my paper snips and cut off the end like so. All right, this is ready to attach to our card. At this point, you can decide, I'll show you a few more examples at the end, if you want your greeting to kind of be angled up like that, which is how I'm going to do this one, or if you want it down. I kind of feel like centered on this, I don't know, it's just not my favorite. I feel like it needs a little bit more movement on the card. So I am going to angle this one going up. All right, at this point, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I would have added this or that. For instance, this piece could have been run through an embossing folder. Yes, I agree, and that would be beautiful, but now we're starting to get too busy for a Simply Saturday card. So remember, the goal of this is fast and easy. Also at this point, you might be imagining some embellishments, but we're not going to embellish today. This is our completed card. The reason I mentioned Sahara Sand being a really good choice, it does coordinate with my paper, but it is light enough that it is not really requiring a white panel on the inside. Let me show you a couple others as we wrap it up here. This is the same designer series paper, this time done on shaded spruce. All right, words going down just to vary it, but you can see that this one is going to definitely need a white panel on the inside. It's just too dark to try to write your message. All right, let's look at another one. This paper for me was one that was challenging. It's kind of a Burke looking paper, and every time I would pull it out to use it, couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do. And in this instance, it's perfect. Now, on the Cherry Cobbler, again, I would add a white panel on the inside. And then to finish this off, here's one more on Sahara Sand, which does not necessarily need the panel. And on this one, just to try something different, I did use a strip of ribbon. So you could trade that out and it still qualifies as a fast and easy card. This was an extremely challenging paper for me. The poinsettias are beautiful, but it's such a large print. I feel like using it in this card design actually features the paper instead of trying to figure out how to use the paper with a bunch of busy stamps. So there you have it. That is our Simply Saturday card for today. I do appreciate you stopping by, and if you have not subscribed yet, I do invite you to do that. It helps me very much, and tell all of your crafty friends to do the same. Below this video, if you open up the description box, you will see all kinds of helpful information, including a host code if you would like to order some product, and also some information on the products that I used and the dimensions and so forth. Until next time, happy stamping.